What's going on, world? It's your boy Gemini Brown here, back with another episode of Nalo Kicking Knowledge. Today, we got a special episode. This one came in through my email as a question from one of my longtime subscribers. Shout out Jill O'Neill. And, she basically asked if you can tell whether or not someone is being truthful or not via astrological chart and transits. So what I want to do is focus here and say that how we can judge whether someone is being wrongfully accused and the likelihood that someone is lying. However, we have to keep in mind that astrology presents a formula, but ultimately, just like existence itself, you have to follow your intuition and believe what sits right with you. All right? So I'm just going to point out a couple indicators, but ultimately, intuition, you got to follow your gut sometime, okay? So let's start off with seeing if someone is being wrongfully accused of something, okay? And this will kind of segue into, seeing why someone is being accused as well. So we want to take a look at how all different types of houses. The first thing to consider is the allegation that is being made. So if this has to do with some type of sexual allegation, we're obviously going to look into first houses 4, 8, and 12, because this represents things behind closed doors where we can't really see, and secrets, all right? So you want to look at houses 4, 8, and 12. Secondly, where you always want to look at in, all forms of accusations are the angles 1, 4, 7, and 10. The first house obviously represents us. It is the physical vessel and how you are interacting with the world. The 10th house is how your public persona, that ascendant, how that ascendant is perceived in the world. Okay, so it's your outer world persona and credibility and all of that. 7th house is other people, so how other people are viewing you. And then the 4th house is your private life. It's home, it's, your emotions, your inner psyche, all of that. So all these houses will those angles will definitely always play some sort of role. But like I said, we always have to keep in account the type of allegation that is being made. If it's theft, we're going to look at, 2nd and 8. That's, personal resources versus other people's resources. And then here's the key thing, y'all. The signs are natural extensions of these houses. So if you get Capricorn on your 2nd house, your values, your personal wealth and things of that nature is affected by your outside persona and your career, okay? Things of that nature. So it's a lot to comprehend, but once you can really blend the houses with the signs, you will reach another level of astrology, okay? So that's something to really keep in mind. So going back to seeing if someone is being wrongfully accused. So let's use an example. And this is ironic that just a few weeks ago, the singer Chris Brown was falsely accused of rape. Okay? And if you don't know, Chris Brown is a Taurus sun, Taurus moon as well, and Leo rising. Okay? So at this time, when this accusation was made, Venus was transiting his 5th house of romance, hobbies, recreation, okay? Sagittarius is long distance travels, okay? it just so happened he was on a long distance trip. He was outside of the country, right? Venus represents, relationships with people, more specifically women, okay? And at the time of this accusation, Venus was in square to Neptune, which rests in his 8th house of sex, intimacy, and, all that other good stuff, secrets, all of that. Now, it's like I said, it's very tricky and there's a lot to consider. You first have to consider what is within the person's natal chart itself. So Chris Brown, as a Leo rising, natally has Cancer in the 12th, which shows that any type of downfall or undoing will likely come through women, okay? And then he has Mars there, an aggression towards women, okay? So, you always got to keep in mind what's in the natal chart. But here, in this instance, where we could kind of see the false accusations is because Neptune represents illusions, okay? Imagination, fantasies. And the planet Venus was in square to Neptune, which can definitely indicate that people we are engaging in relationships with, in this case his 5th and 8th house, he was, recreationally spending time with this people intimately, formed an illusionary, imaginative story against him, okay? Then when we also look at it, I'm not exactly sure, but I believe he might have been receiving a harsh square from Uranus as well, okay? Which is natally in his, not natally, transit-wise going to his 10th house, okay? Which is in his 9th, and that is overseas and abroad. So that's sudden impact, all right? So keep in mind, when looking into things like this, you got to know what the planets represent. You got to know exactly what you're looking for, what is being said here. So, that's one thing. So more times than not, if you're receiving harsh aspects with a planet like Neptune, okay, or Mercury, which is communication, which can be deception. Both planets have a deceptive nature to them, right? So say you have Mercury transiting your 7th house, right? And it's in harsh square to Neptune, or maybe another planet, maybe like Mars. We could see that, other people can be lying on you, and looking at Mars, it can be through an argument, it can be because of a, aggressive speech or whatever, okay? So the blending of the planets and the aspects they make have a huge influence on how to judge these things, all right? So 7th house would be other people, 1st house would be you and how you're being seen, all right? Because the ascendant is you. And then the 10th house is your public persona. So this can add onto a false accusation well, because these days with media and things like that, people may hear something, and based on how you're naturally perceived by the public, they can just naturally buy into that accusation. You know what I'm saying? And then say it's a 4th house transit. Like I said, we just have to look at what planets are involved and what accusations are being made. All right? Where if there's a 4th house transit and the person said, I was assaulted at this person's house, it's more than likely, judging on, the planets transiting through there, or you can judge whether this is accurate or not. All right? So, like I said, there's a formula a bit, but you ultimately have to use intuition. And it's funny because, like I said, 10th house and 1st house is how the world sees you. So if you're having Mars go through that 10th house or 1st house at the time, people can be seeing you as quite aggressive, right? Or if you have that there natally, they naturally think, oh, this person is capable of that, versus if they have a planet like the moon there. You're unwilling, to think about that. And this is funny because the question was sparked from watching something about Michael Jackson. And I believe Michael Jackson was a first house moon. So when it came on to, his sexual allegations, it's hard for no one knew what to believe, because naturally we just see Mike as this gentle soul. And because of that moon influence there, you're like, I don't believe they're capable of that, So lots and lots to consider, right? Now, here's to switch gears a little bit. Here's how we could see things coming to light. And I'll use Bill Cosby as a great example of this. So, a lot when Bill Cosby, I believe they have him as an Aries ascendant, with a host of energy in the sign of Cancer. And a lot of his angle houses are lit up, actually. I know he was like a 4th house sun, so naturally a private person. 12th house Saturn, Jupiter in the 10th in Capricorn. And a lot of things, when you do the work at when the accusations were made, when they came to light, you can see the theme of Bill being caught, So when it comes onto things coming to light, there are 2 planets you definitely, or I should say 3, because it's light. The sun is light, right? The sun of the sign of Leo will always shine a light upon things, especially if they're in those private houses or wherever, this energy is. A light is being shined on the things regarding that house, right? So the sun is one. Saturn, the Lord of Karma, Mr. Reap What You Sow, the Reaper, right? Saturn comes around and pretty much makes sure, you get yours for what you've done, whether positively or negatively. And then we have Jupiter. Jupiter is truth. It is a very lucky influence, but at the same time, it is truth, and it can point, and it is our morals. So when it comes into certain signs, just like us coming off of this Jupiter and Scorpio transit, it's going to give a large indication of our truth and our morals regarding that energy. So in this case, Scorpio, sexual matters, secrets and all of that. So Bill natally has Scorpio in the 8th. And when the first accusations were made against him publicly to start this process, Saturn was in the sign of Scorpio. And it was in October of that time, which was, 7th house, a 7th house transit for him, other people making these accusations, which was squaring his 10th house where Pluto was and natally his Jupiter was, okay? So a lot of these things were pointing to things coming to light regarding other people and his behavior regarding the things of this particular sign. And that was just the beginning. And the whole process culminated with him being found guilty and sentenced while Jupiter was in Scorpio, going through that 8th house where his natal Mars was. And not to mention that Uranus was also transiting his 12th house, okay? And we have the Pluto-Uranus square, which, in the terms of your public persona, it shows suddenly your public persona and image can, come under attack, okay? And like I said, the moral consequences of these actions. So you definitely want to look at, like I said, the sun, because that's shining the light on the matter. You want to look at Saturn, because Saturn is, serving justice, basically. Hence why it's exalted in the sign of Libra. And then you got Jupiter, which is truth. okay, truth to, and blessing. So if you didn't do anything, Jupiter's going to make sure you're all good. You know, like Jupiter, you're never going to be wrongfully accused or anything like that through Jupiter. Or nor Saturn, because it's all about integrity and, you know, you reap what you sow here. All right? So I'll just reiterate again, you know, astrology presents us with the opportunity to look deep into things within our world and then within our life, right? So when trying to do this, this should, you know, give you incentive to know the planets at a deeper level, know what they really mean, right? Knowing that Mercury is communication and speech, Neptune is illusion. So when those are in harsh aspect, it can represent illusionary speech. And then place that in the 7th house, that's being projected upon me. Or if it's in a person's first house, they can be broadcasting illusionary speech. You know, it's like putting together a puzzle. All right? But ultimately, you got to follow your intuition, you know? All right, so I hope everybody enjoyed this episode. Shout out Jill for the question. If you have anything in mind, feel free to email me. Let me know your thoughts. And, you know, when I got time, I'll definitely make a video about it. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, feel free to do so. Until next time, peace.